We making moves. We making major moves. We making moves. We making major moves. We going all in. Like we got nothing to lose. We making moves. We making major moves.
What is up, everybody? I'm Mr. Man. I've been off for a hot minute, but I came to drop some fire for you guys today. I'm going to do my best to explain this in the documents that I have here, and the best to explain it in the videos that I have here, to show you almost precisely, and I use that term specifically, almost precisely, how the digital euro and how the digital dollar will be implemented. Now, this is just based off of the information I've gathered over the years, the documents I've read, the web pages I've skimmed through, the Wayback Machine that I've waybacked, and the videos that I've watched hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of hours. I got the black mask on today. This is gonna be serious info. Let's jump into this. I want to start in Europe with the SEPA, the Single European Payments Association here. And this is the one leg out approach. And the one leg out is just because they're like, we're not ready to dive head first. We want to just put one leg out and see how it goes. And then we'll put the other leg out afterwards. And then we'll move with the body. You know what I'm saying? They got the single leg out, the one leg out approach. So the scheme allows these Euro leg PSP payment service providers to offer account-to-account based payment solutions supporting both income and ongoing international instant credit transfers. It gives them the possibility to offer their payees and payers a faster execution of such transactions, more upfront transparency on cost and on the parties involved in concerned, about, and a better payment status traceability, for example, via the option of UETR and inquiry use cases. Okay. The scheme sets well-defined processing timelines and steps for OCT inst transactions in the Euro leg. So this is only in the Eurozone. This is taking place. They're keeping that within themselves first. Just like the digital shekel, they're keeping that within themselves too. Just like the digital Zim, keeping that within themselves. The digital Zam, keeping that in Jamaica. The digital Sand Dollar, keeping that in Bahamas. There's no cross-border yet. It's little islands right now. Little islands, just like individual blockchains. Only little islands. It will also enable more efficient and cost-effective processing, clearing, and settling through these credit transfers within the EU leg using the ISO 20022 XML messaging standard and existing intermediary PSPs and clearing and settlement mechanisms. So does this necessarily mean that they'll be using digital currencies to settle or digital assets to settle at that point? Digital currencies, yes. Digital assets, maybe. And settlement mechanisms operating in the Euro leg. The scheme aims at maximizing or maximum possible alignment with the SCT inst scheme. And now I want to go down to here. Here's their scheme calendar. Okay, so November, let's go down to the bottom here. Sorry, the top here. So November 28th, the scheme launched. That had passed a couple months back until December 31st, possibility to submit change request to the version 1.1 of the 2023 October OCT rulebook between March and June 2024. 3 public consultations. So as we jump over now to the EBA, the European Banking Authority, the EBA consults on draft technical standards on the procedure for the approval of white papers of asset reference tokens issued by credit institutions under the MiCA regulations, Markets in Crypto Assets Regulations. So MiCA, or MiCA, however you pronounce that. So this is being in consultation until January 22nd, 2024. And today we are January 15th, 2024. The WEF annual meeting is also starting today. So the European Banking Authority today published a consultation paper on draft regulatory technical standards on the procedure for the approval of white papers of asset reference tokens. So now they will be accepting white papers from these companies who want to be introducing asset reference tokens, whatever those asset reference tokens are, issued by credit institutions. These draft regulatory technical standards aim at harmonizing the approval procedure across the European Union by laying down the steps and time frame to be followed by credit institutions and by the relevant competent authority. The consultation runs until January 22nd, 2024. So, jumping ahead, here we are on ESMA's website now, the European Security and Market Authority. Jumping down here, right to their roadmap, okay? So, yeah, here, consultation page 3, here we go. So, the third and final consultation package is expected to be published in Q1 2024. This package will likely cover all those remaining mandates with an 18-month deadline, including qualifications of crypto assets as financial instruments, monitoring, detecting, and notifications of market abuse, investor protection, reverse solicitation, suitability of advice and portfolio management services to the client, policies and procedures for crypto asset transfer services, including clients' rights, system resilience. Here it is. System resilience and security access protocols. Remember that last one there, because that's going to tie in to near the last thing I show you guys. So, looking at their time frame, here we go. Entry. I'll show you what is there. There's MiCA. Entry into applications Title 3 and Title 4. And then December is when MiCA goes live. Let me jump back now to June again. So we were just talking about the asset reference tokens going live. And then they're in consultation right now until January 22nd, 2024, which is a few days from now. Now this here is Lexology. This is MiCA Andorra ante partes. Germany clarifies application for EU regulations. So let's see what that's about now. So the markets and crypto assets MiCA will apply from December 30th, 2024, except for the provisions on e-money tokens and asset reference tokens, which will begin and apply June 30th, 2024. So you're going to see a flood of these new white papers coming out. January 22nd, 2024. Look for all these new white papers and companies and whatever coming out. That's not going to make the market move. There's no adoption yet. It's just the ending of consultation. So now the reading of these white papers can now begin, and they can look through and say, yep, okay, you meet regulatory guidelines that we presented for you. Cool. Roll it out. Do what you got to do. But realize that MiCA is not going live until December 30th, 2024. So that's where we're stopping right now in terms of where the MiCA is. Let's keep going back now. Back to SEPA. Here's where we were. So between March and June 2024, there's a 3-month public consultation, which we had just spoken about now. And then November, actually, sorry, that's a different one. This is 2024. And then November 2024, publication of the next rule book entering into effect as of November 2025. What happens in December, or what happens in 2025? So what else happens in 2025? This is the global regulators come for crypto, okay? Again, I'm going to walk you guys through this, so please stay with me. Bear with me. So beginning 2025, global banking regulators will require an ultra-conservative capital treatment for banks' crypto exposures, and the Financial Stability Board is slated to issue high-level recommendations for regulating the crypto industry in July 2025. Boom. Also taking place 2025. In the beginning, in January, China's proposed capital rules to align with Basel III. All right, I'm not going to try to read those names there, but at Fitch Ratings, estimated the 4 Chinese G-SIBs will need to issue at least CNY 1.3 trillion capital instruments by January 2025. Why? Because China begins their Basel III implementation. Proposed capital rules stemming from the implementation of the final Basel III standards will not immediately affect the ratings of the Chinese bank. This is because Fitch Ratings estimates that the impact on their capital requirements is neutral. The bank's issuers' default ratings, which are driven by our expectations of government support, will be unaffected. Also, there's a 3-year phase-in period for this. This isn't just China. Here we are now on EY, Ernst & Young. They are a consultants company, okay? Bear with me still. Basel III Endgame, what you need to know. This is the US now, all right? Basel III Endgame, B3E, is the latest update to global capital standards, a dramatic change to the current US risk-based capital framework. U.S. regulators have proposed July 2025. Notice the connections for compliance with the new requirements with a multi-year transition period. That multi-year is leading up to 2028. Now that you have that date, let's go back to where we were before. So here we are now on the European Money and Finance Forum, SURF 60, okay? This is back from 2021. So what's at stake? We have recently been seeing an acceleration in the pace of digitalization. The shift has been turbocharged by the coronavirus pandemic. At the same time, payments are an integral part of our everyday lives and, in a wider sense, the lifeblood of the economy. Thus, the digital payments are of great strategic importance, not only for the further development of efficient financial markets, but also for prosperous economy as a whole. At the same time, digitalization is not a domestic development, but a global phenomenon. It's going to start domestically, wherever you are domestic. That's going to start there domestically, and then cross-border will take shape, with a handful of international players playing key roles, right? For instance, by operating large platforms with broad range of services and strong customer bases. The political conclusion that needs to be drawn from these two premises is as follows. We have to speed up our innovation efforts. Speed up our innovation efforts. We were just talking about a pandemic that helped speed up the first time. And we might just do so in a way that safeguards the contestability, competitiveness, safety, and sovereignty of the European payments market, which serves 450 million customers and processes 150 billion cashless payments in the EU each year. Different levels of digitalization, the house of payments. Distinguishing between digital and non-digital payments is no trivial matter, since the majority of payments nowadays are already conducted electronically. To illustrate the difference, the idea of a house of payments, or a house of cards, a multi-level structure that is undergoing never-ending construction, is introduced and further explained in the following. The ground floor of the house consists of cash payments, which have been widely accepted, easy to use, and quite resilient. Resilient means of payments for centuries. Any account holders at private banks, the building block for payments at higher level, can be withdrawn and converted into cash holdings. So we're going to go down to this house. So here we are at the bottom of this house. Physical cash. There's the foundation, physical cash. And then they got us into credit transfers, right? Including instant payments and direct debit. Formerly paper-based, now electronic instructions for money transfers. And then we got the cards, the debit cards, just stacking on top of those layer upon layer. And then we moved into contact payments, right? Contactless payment. Tappity tap, tap, tap. Take your debit card out and you can tap the shit out of that thing and spend all you want. Don't even realize you're spending money because you're tappity tapping too much. Now what we're waiting for is the wallets to come out there. See that there? Right there. We're waiting for those wallets to get dropped. The regulations on the wallets. All right? So this is new technical access to traditional electronic payments. When you have your digital wallet connecting with your crypto payments and your digital asset payments, not just your e-money, because we've had e-money for quite some time now. Since you've been using debit cards and since you've been using your phones from the early days, you've had e-money. But now we're moving into digital payments now, real digital payments with asset reference tokens, as we had gone through not too long ago, a few minutes ago actually. Once those asset reference tokens take place, also known as stable coins, watch out. Digital money, centralized or decentralized issuance. CBDCs are centralized, stable coins. Still, I don't know what to call them. They're centralized, clearly. There's a company behind them, but based on the issuance of a decentralized platform itself. And then we get to programmable money, fully automated digital payment processes via smart contracts. That's the completed CBDC, not just an SCBDC, which is also the synthetic CBDC. And I saw the first issuance of a synthetic CBDC and struggled to make sense of this makeup of it. But the synthetic CBDC was essentially what Stellar Aid was about. And that came out in 2021, where you have the National Bank of Ukraine, with Tascom Bank. So National Bank being the governing entity. Then below them you have the commercial bank, which is Tascom Bank down here. Then you have technology in the background, which is from Bit Inc. And then you have the platform on your phone, which is DIA for Ukraine. And beneath all of that, you have the rails connecting it all, which was XLM. And USDC had been sanctioned in both countries for use of digital payments for asset reference tokens, because USDC holds treasuries and cash, treasury bonds, and a few other things. So that had to have live regulations for that to exist, because what would make that money? Nothing other than regulations. Regulations makes that money, and that's how that structure worked. So let's keep going on here. So here we are at the Linklaters now. Linklaters, the EU lays out ambitious plan to open up financial data and reform digital payments. I forgot to tell you that EU and US have a data sharing bilateral agreement. Let me pull that up for you here. So here we are on the European Commission's website here, the EU and US data transfer, how personal data transfers between the EU and the US protected, also known as an RLN, a regulated liability network, and also known as a trust network, or a trust, an anchor, if you will. Commercial sector adequacy decision on the EU-US data privacy framework on July 10th. The European Commission adopted its adequacy decision for the EU-US data privacy framework. On the basis of the adequacy decision, personal data can flow freely from the EU to companies in the US that participate in the data privacy framework. Boom! Okay, so the EU envisages a future where you can control access to your financial data. You are protected from payment fraud and can make payments in digital euro as easily as cash. This vision is the bedrock of a package of legislation proposals released by the EU Commission on the 28th of June 2023. The proposal will be debated for several months, but could start to apply when? In 2025 or 2026. What do we know was going on in 2025 again, right? What do we know? Wasn't China and US starting their implementation of the Basel III endgame and the Basel III reform in China? All right? So we got now a nice timeline of events of things that are going to happen that are leading up to this rocket that we're waiting for. And all y'all out there who calling me a shill, realize I'm on that same train waiting for this rocket to take off too. This bullet train to take off. Just lock and loaded. I'm waiting for this. You better believe it. I'm not shilling nothing. I'm not telling nobody what to invest in. I'm not telling anybody what to do, how to play their card game. You play your own card game. I give you information based off of the information that I read and the dots that I connect, and you do what works for you. Realize that, all right? Don't get me twisted here. So here we are now on the European Commission's website, all right? On the 28th of June, 2023, there had been a reform, regulations of the European Parliament and the Council on the legal tender of euro banknotes and coin. They have updated and amended already behind your back, and you didn't even know about it. They now offer digital euro in terms of amendments being ready to go already. So when they say we don't have a reason, we don't have a means, we don't have a reason, they're just stalling. And behind all of that, they are implementing policies. Okay, so the context of the proposal. The arrival of the euro as the single European currency was a major step forward in European integration. This was all planned, all planned. Euro cash is a dominant means of payment. As citizens and retailers use euro cash in daily transactions to make payments, let me show you guys where I'm at, to make payments or give change in the euro area. Cash is the only means of payments that allows direct in-person payments with immediate settlement and without involvement of any third party or use of electronic equipment. The growth of electronic payments, a trend accelerated by COVID-19, again, has led to a general decline in cash payments and the reduction of, spelt really badly, automated teller machines, or ATMs. Networks in a number of member states means that there are risks to access to cash. Thus, the issue of the scope and meaning of the legal tender status of cash has become more prominent in the EU policy agenda. So now they're playing around with the word cash in terms of definition, as outlined in the Commission's retail payment strategy and in view of the recent ruling of the Court of Justice of the European Union on the matter. So let's go into this ruling. This ruling is significant because it sets out the court's jurisprudence, the key aspects of the concept of legal tender, which until now have only been found in the Commission recommendations of the 22nd of March 2010 on the scope and effects of legal tender of euro banknotes and coins. Although EU law directly attributes the status of legal tender to euro banknotes and coins, neither primary nor secondary EU law defines the concept of legal tender. In its judgment in the legal tender cases, the Court of Justice held that the concept of legal tender of euro banknotes enshrined in Article 128.1 TFEU is a concept of union law and must be given an autonomous and uniform interpretation throughout the EU. The concept of legal tender is, as interpreted by the Court of Justice for euro banknotes, implies mandatory acceptance at full face value and with the effect of discharging payment obligations set out by point 1 of the 2010 Commission recommendation. So you see now they're playing and finding the loopholes within that construct of definition that they defined back in 2010, because they just said legal tender defined as cash and or coins. Didn't say what cash is. Cash can be a legal definition as well. And you watch, that'll be changed. And soon, the 2010 edition, the March 22nd, 2020 edition amendment will be no more. Once they implement digital currency cash, there'll be that phase-in period, which we are. You and I are that phase-in period. And somewhere down the lines, that amendment will be gone. And that 2010 amendment will not exist anymore. There'll be a definition that states cash is electronic means of payments. Guaranteed. with that being said, humanity now has to rethink how we operate, what we do, how we fit into society. You heard them say that cash is an economic construct, or money is an economic construct. Listen to this gentleman here. This is what it's like to have or to be under an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, and having to watch your words when you want to say something, but you can't get the entire thing out. And you got handlers or people looking out for you, right? This isn't for you and us. This is for them, all right?
Victor. I think Sam is right, because we never had a stage where what is now called technological singularity, and that is at a time where the collection of human wisdom is being overwhelmed by technological advance. And also, humanity depends on a global collaboration where people see eye to eye, collaborate on major challenges of today and tomorrow. All the big problems of today and tomorrow requires global collaboration. And when you have the polarization of geopolitics, where some big boys are not seeing eye to eye, we need to be careful that technological advance in silo without a global guardrail could trigger unintended consequences. And that's why this time may be different.
Unintended consequences, you say, huh? Very, very interesting. Let's see what these unintended consequences may look like. Keep in mind, so Europe right now and the UK are the ones leading the money transformation for us, well, globally. Everybody's waiting for them globally. VARA's set up, everything else is set up. China has their framework, Korea has their framework, Japan has their framework, Singapore has their framework, Jamaica has their framework, Bahamas has their framework, Palau's working on their digital currency. So now we're waiting for the big boys to get to step into the ring and to do their thing. And this is how it's going to play out. All right, listen to this.
I think I'm going to jump in before him because CBDCs, I think he's going to have a very strong view. Look, I mean, there's obviously...
Give your honest review, right? Because like I led you in. I left the door open to tell an honest review. Are we going to get payments, like crypto acceptance before, or is just one going to show up tomorrow morning at our front steps?
Look, so I think in the world of payments and crypto, there's P2P decentralized, and then I think, as you said, there's a centralized version of it, right? Stable coins or CBDCs, whatever that ends up being. The thing is that if you look at the CBDC pilots that have happened in Nigeria and some other places, none of them have really worked. And that's because distribution is always the issue, right? So there's one element of trust, and we can talk about that too, but I think if you want any payment system, any payment network to happen, whether it's MasterCard or it's a crypto payment, distribution has to be there. So when you walk into your favorite coffee shop or you take a taxi, people want to be able to pay with this. And in the end, the general public doesn't care if it's a blockchain payment or if it's a fiat payment. All they want is to be able to transfer value to someone. And if you don't have enough distribution or enough points where you can actually pay with something, then people just aren't going to be using that. So I think for CBDCs personally, I think it's a very long view. I think there's a lot of work that still has to be done. And we obviously have to get over the initial hurdles around, trust and everything else.
Okay, I'd like to...
So keep in mind, we just read Europe. They're potentially going live with the digital euro in the Eurozone in 2025, 2026. Now listen to what this gentleman has to say here. This is a payments conference here, the World Blockchain Summit. And this was recently, a month ago, literally a month ago. Listen to this.
To hear what you think about this, because CBDCs, in my opinion, we should all have an opinion, but I want to lead you into talking about if CBDCs tomorrow morning, legislation of America, or here in Dubai, someone says, great, we're announcing the e-dirham, right? What does that look like in the first 90 days of it being implemented? Okay, I can go to pay government services for, my passport control or Visa. That makes a lot of sense, ground level. How about the candy store or the laundromat or, something like that? What does the first 90 days look like when a CBD gets announced?
So I want to speak, I want to respect the UAE here and just admit that I have no idea, very much how the government and regulations work here. I can only speak to where I grew up. Even though I haven't lived in America for 6 years, I'm very familiar with the way that monetary and fiscal policy work over there. And you have a very divisive and opinionated public over there. And you've got a lot of people who happily go along with the things that the government asks them to do. And then you have a lot of people who ask questions and wonder if this is really in their own best interest. Right now, I think it would be very unpopular to try to enter a CBDC into the American population. And they know that, right? And they know, and I don't think that America has been watching China work on a CBDC for 5 or 6 years and doesn't have one in their back pocket ready to go. I think that they absolutely do. The question is, how are they going to implement it, right? And we know that the government, unfortunately in America, left the great vision of a very radical idea with very minimal government intervention and very much a pure democracy to a very controlling state where you saw that even more recently than ever with lockdowns. But in order for them to usher in a radical new idea, they need to create an environment to where the public is asking for it, right? And you have a very particular time in America happening right now where you have CPI or inflation increasing, still not under control. Interest rates are higher than ever. Bond markets are crashing. The highest stimulus injection into the economy ever outside of wartime and pandemic was just announced by the Biden administration, almost $1 trillion. We're inflating the monetary supply by over $1 trillion a year for the past 20-something years on average. So you have a very, very unsustainable system that's happening right now that they cannot kick the can down the road much longer. People are starting to lose faith in the ability for the U.S. to pay back their debts. This is why the bond market is not doing so well. And people are going to look elsewhere to put their money. So how do you implement something like a CBDC, which gives much more control to the government over what you choose to do with your money? Things like if they need to stimulate the economy, they can make it so that your money expires if you don't use it after a certain period of time. Well, they need an event to happen where people are asking for it. So in my opinion, the way that the US CBDC gets introduced is eventually probably 2025, 2026, after you have the elections that come through and you have essentially what's looking like hyperinflation. Something has to break. We all know that something has to break. The Fed has said it many times in the past. And people like Ray Dalio and other people are calling for this, lots of data to back this up. So this looks like a 1930s, Great Depression type of event that happens. This will put everybody out of work. This will put everybody out of food, and people will be scared, right? People who have had safety and security, food and shelter will be scared for the first time in a long time and not knowing what to do, right? And then you will have whoever is in office and running at the time will come out with the solution, right? Everyone's really hungry, scared, out of work, doesn't have any money. And so the solution will be, hey, we are modern, we're hip, we're cool, we use blockchain. It's not real blockchain, it's a centralized blockchain, but we use blockchain. And we have a way better monetary system. The guys of the past, they tried their best, it was a failed system. Now we're putting everything on blockchain, it's gonna be transparent, you guys can trust us, blah, blah, blah. And we know that you're hurting right now, we're sorry the economy sucks. All you have to do is download this app, scan your face, connect all your accounts, and we will instantly send you, $1,200 of stimulus so that you can go buy food and groceries and, pay your mortgage, pay your rent. And this has to happen. I already know right now that that it will not be openly accepted with open arms. But as we know, when the U.S. had all of their privacy stripped away from them after 9/11, they made this huge bill about the Patriot Act and how it was going to be the anti-terrorist bill. But what they really did was sign away all of our rights to privacy, for them to wiretap our phones and look at all of our conversations. This would have never happened if you didn't have this big event happen prior that made everybody terrified of terrorists. And
so there was a big event that happened that terrified everybody. We heard how it dropped and how it's going to happen, right? From this gentleman. This lady here is with MasterCard. She is with MasterCard. These are people in the know. Moving on. So I want you to realize that different events might take place in different jurisdictions. What constituted a pandemic back then might not be what constitutes a pandemic now. So we have here the WHO. Okay, the World Health Organization Pandemic Prevention, Preparedness, and Response Accord. Member states of the World Health Organization have agreed to a global process to draft and negotiate a convention, agreement, or other international instrument under the Constitution of the World Health Organization to strengthen pandemic prevention, preparedness, and responses. Now listen, because there's only certain preparedness measures that they have for specific pandemics. So convention framework agreements and treaties are all examples of international instruments which are legal agreements made between countries that are binding, whether you agreed with them or not. The country did, and you have no say. So there are international instruments addressing a broad range of topics, including tobacco control, nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons, climate change, and many other threats to our shared security and well-being. So here, this is, I'm going to show you it's a longer clip, but it's coming from the NSABB. And who is the NSABB? This is the National Science Advisory Board for Biosecurity. So they're a federal advisory committee, a committee that addresses issues related to biosecurity and dual-use research at the request of the United States government. At the request of the United States government. Listen to this.
I've actually been asked to give a potted history of our 2001 paper, which caused a little bit controversy at the time. It's a history of the things that we did do, a little bit of the history that we didn't do, and we hope that it's open for all discussions from this point of view. One of the problems Australia has is every 4 or 5 years, there's a mouse plague. We have lots and lots of rabbits in Australia, and all of which influence agricultural output. We usually use biocontrol agents to control the rabbit population, such as myxoma, calicivirus, but both the rabbits and the viruses are co-evolving to live happily together without major effects. So the idea was we needed a new biocontrol agent. The idea was to make a virus that only infects rabbits or only infects mouse, that causes immunosterility. Our modeling systems say this would be a very, very useful way of controlling the population, and for some reason it would be humanely rather nice rather than killing them. So what the idea was to make a virus.
I hope my channel doesn't get blown up, all right? I'm not suicidal. I laugh now, but shit. Like, yeah, all right? Who knows where life will lead?
That encodes a gene for a protein involved in reproduction. And the idea was the virus would infect the animal would make antibodies to the encoded protein and cause infertility. It was a nice idea, and we went about it, and the protein that we used was called ZP3, and it's found on the ovum. And it's the docking point of the sperm in this case. The idea is the animals would make an antibody like we would make an antibody to influenza vaccine and prevent fertility. In fact, it worked remarkably well, surprised us all. Those animals that were infected with a mousepox virus, which contained this ZP3, were infertile for the lifetime of the animal under those circumstances. The rabbits had the same effect under these circumstances. So we had developed a new technology which caused infertility. It's the next step that we added to this that caused all the controversy. And I'll go into that now, but there's a lot of bright individuals in this audience, and I wonder if some of you have already picked up a dual-use issue that we missed at the time. And that dual-use issue is we've created a transmissible virus that causes infertility. That was never discussed at the time. And that's fascinating. In other words, I think they actually made a science fiction movie men or boys or something like this, where the world was made infertile by a passaging virus. So here's an example of dual use that we ourselves have missed. We published without ever recognizing it. What we did recognize, however, was when we tried to increase the potency of these viruses that caused this immunosterility. And we added another gene called interleukin-4. And this gene is a cytokine. It's used by the immune system to stimulate antibody responses. So the theory was that we'd get better antibody responses with these viruses with this gene in. In fact, what we did find was not that the result, but the result was the viruses were highly pathogenic, and it killed mice rapidly, and even mice who were genetically resistant were killed with this interleukin-4 virus. The interleukin-4 itself suppressed the immune response, and that's why it was killing the virus under these circumstances. So basically what we had shown is that we had a greatly increased pathogenic virus that antiviral drugs didn't work against. We had showed that later. But more importantly, and this was the staggering effect that shook us at the time, was that vaccinated mice that would normally resist an infection were not resistant to this interleukin-4 virus. The interleukin-4 virus killed the vaccinated mice. And it was at that point that the researchers identified what is now known as a dual-use dilemma. The dual-use dilemma in biological sciences was not recognized in early 2000, but we said there was a problem. Now, how did we deal with it? Well, basically, we asked all our colleagues, what should we do? Shall we publish? Shall we keep it secret? And without going into too much detail, in an audience this size, it was presented to all our academics. And the general consensus, the majority, almost 100% consensus, was to publish. So we did ask our colleagues, and the answer was, there's enough out there that you should publish and let everyone know what is possible under these circumstances. In fact, the great Frank Fenner, who was involved in the eradication of smallpox, also had this view. So what happened next in terms of history? We submitted the article to the Journal of Virology, and it was accepted for publication. Around a little time before the publication, there was a roving reporter from New Scientist called Rachel Novak came around and wanted to know what interesting things we were doing in research. And I told her all about our great work in prime boost immunization with HIV, and she didn't seem that interested. But I said, oh, we've got this paper coming out that shows that vaccinated mice can't be protected against this virus. And her ears picked up like no one's business. This was an article that she could get her teeth into. And she wanted to write about it. We obviously couldn't say no. We accepted that because it was coming out in press in a month's time. And she wanted to write the article in the New Scientist. We asked if the article could be sent to the institutions concerned a week beforehand, so that we could look at it. I didn't think it was too dramatic. It was dramatic in terms of New Scientist. But the institutions themselves said in their bureaucracy, it's a common feature of bureaucracy to try to protect themselves, we better advertise it ourselves. We can't wait for New Scientist to come out. We will announce these results ourselves to the press. And when those results were announced, I think it went viral around the world under those circumstances, that this was the example of what biotechnology can do under these circumstances, and this was a major, major concern. Now, I don't know if the institutions themselves created the problem themselves. It's not an experiment you can redo, but it may not have made the headlines it did had the institutions had just accepted the New Scientist. But that would be a guess under these circumstances from that point of view. The rest is history. In other words, the paper is quoted as a dual-use example under these circumstances, but what I haven't talked to people about is some of the experiments that we did after that, after the papers, and those are the experiments we chose not to publish. In other words, we did make an individual choice not to publish certain papers. And I can just briefly touch upon these from that point of view. Many people thought that the virus was so pathogenic it wouldn't transmit. In fact, it does transmit. Transmission of this virus occurs exactly 7 days after infection. And if the mouse lives that long, it will transmit. So it does transmit. One of the very interesting findings that we made, and I won't go into the details why it's interesting in terms of biosecurity or elsewhere, was when we looked at these animals, these vaccinated animals, being vaccinated, infected with the IL-4 virus, when we looked for virus in these animals, and these animals died about a day later than normal non-vaccinated animals, so they were killed very quickly. When we looked for virus in these animals, we couldn't find any. Vaccinated animals challenged with the IL-4 virus lacked, or seemed to lack, any virus in their system. That was a remarkable finding, and we looked very, very closely for this, and we could detect very, very low levels of virus. 100, 1,000 plaque-forming units of virus was present in those animals, and that's quite remarkable. So these vaccinated animals actually aren't dying of the virus, they're dying of the toxicity of the interleukin-4. And that's really quite a significant finding from this point of view. We also looked at other...
There you have it. There you have it. So, moving on. In 2 days from now, the World Economic Forum is meeting. They're meeting as of today, January 15th to the 19th. But in 2 days from now, they'll be meeting, preparing for Disease X. Whether that, what we just heard, correlates with this, I don't know. But you can be damn certain something was going to happen. Why are they preparing for something? Why did those other guys, the government agency, who these guys speak to, why did they create this stuff? Why? Where the vaccine kills these animals. And it makes it very transmissible, right? With fresh warnings from the World Health Organization, who we went through already, that an unknown disease X could result in 20 times more fatalities than the coronavirus pandemic. What novel efforts are needed to prepare healthcare systems for the multiple challenges ahead? They know this already. So here we have Bill Gates now pouring his heart out. We need to be prepared for the next planned pandemic.
We need to be prepared for the next pandemic. We were not prepared for COVID-19, so we need to do better. And we need to be committed to make sure all tools get out to everyone in the world. China's expertise and resources and manufacturing capacities will help us meet those needs.
The last thing you want is a bidding war between countries for this vaccine. You know, we know there are 60 million healthcare workers around the world who are keeping everybody safe. They deserve to get this vaccine first. And from there, you want to do tiering in various countries to make sure your most vulnerable populations get it. In our country, that would be Blacks and Native Americans, people with underlying health conditions, and the elderly.
Bill, how confident are you that we as a global community will deal with the next pandemic better?
Well, you know, there were a lot of people in 2015 after the Ebola epidemic who were talking about what needed to be done. And in this pandemic, the countries that had some exposure to SARS-CoV-1 were amongst the outliers. So Australia is a true outlier. They orchestrated diagnostics, they executed quarantine policies, and they have a death rate in a different league than the other rich countries. I mean, just utterly different. And everybody had the capability to do that. They, have less PCR machines than other rich countries. It wasn't something. They had more travelers coming in from China than other countries. So hopefully, given so many negative things, not just the millions of deaths and the economic toll, but the lack of schooling, depression, overdose deaths. I mean, it's hard to make the entire list. As you say, for men, more men died. For women, more women had unacceptable burdens thrust onto them. So the cost of being ready for the next pandemic is not super large. It's not like climate change where, 10 trillion, 20 trillion, these are big numbers. A global surveillance capability would cost like $1 billion a year. The R&D that we need to do to get magic vaccines and diagnostics and therapeutics, that's less than $100 billion over the next decade. So, if we're rational, yes, the next time we'll catch it early, and it won't go global like it did this time.
So, we might get some pandemic of sorts. Here we are at another pandemic that we might get too. Y'all heard about this already, the cybersecurity threat. Here we go. Listen to this, all right? I'm coming to a close after this, and I think I got one more thing to show you, and then that's it. Enjoy.
We're all familiar with a human pandemic, and this illustration here or animation kind of shows how COVID was distributed throughout the world by humans, a human virus as opposed to a computer virus. And as we all remember, it took weeks and a few months, three months roughly, before it really spread all over the world, before planes, trains, and automobiles allowed humans to go from place to place. It took time, covered a lot of ground, time and space entered into it. But in the case of a cyber pandemic, that there is no or very little time and space impact because all of our computers are connected globally at nearly the speed of light, all through the internet. And in the case of a cyber pandemic, and many experts say we're already in the midst of one, that's not my definition. My definition of a global cyber pandemic would be a particular computer virus that is unwittingly or perhaps intentionally, I just think that it's higher that it'll be unwittingly, a computer virus that is catastrophic. Like they did not realize what kind of damage this virus would cause if it ever got out into the wild, much like COVID, or whatever you believe the source of that, whether it was come from a lab or came from a wet market in China, it was something we'd never seen before. In the case of a cyber pandemic, global cyber pandemic, it's not going to take weeks and months. It's going to be minutes, hours, maybe days, and it'll be worldwide. And there's many experts that believe that not only can we learn lessons from the human COVID pandemic, but there's many experts that believe that a true global cyber pandemic will cause much more harm, perhaps many more deaths than what we experienced with COVID. In fact, it may make COVID look like a speed bump in the case of a true global cyber pandemic.
So think about it now. We have that cyber attack, that other pandemic Bill Gates has warned us about now. We heard the gentleman from that payments conference there with the MasterCard woman on the end there saying that the people have to want it. They have to want it. And right now they're at war with their government. They're at odds ends with their government. They're bumping heads. They're not seeing eye to eye. In EU, the farmers are out there throwing shit at the parliament. In Canada, doing the same thing. In the US, no. So, we know how it's gonna go down now. And what happens after that? We've read about it. We've heard asset reference tokens are coming out in June. We heard MiCA rolls out. Let's check out what happens afterwards.
Imagine a digital single payment solution that could be used for any kind of payment throughout the euro area. Guess what? It could become a reality. A digital euro. Easy, safe, fast, reliable. Digital money from the European Central Bank at your fingertips whenever you need it. But how would it work? Say you've gone for a meal with a friend and you want to split the bill. Simple. Open the digital euro wallet on your smartphone, check your balance, enter the amount to pay your friend, confirm your transfer. Your friend will receive the money instantly, free of charge. It doesn't matter which country you're in or who your payment provider is. Payments are still made instantly, even offline. It's also easy to use the digital euro at your favorite local shops. Unlock your device, place it on the terminal, authenticate, make the payment online or offline. If you want, you can also use a physical card. What about e-commerce? The digital euro is also available when you're buying something online. Be it digital or physical, a euro will always be a euro and have the same value irrespective of format. Let's embrace the digital era with the digital euro.
So you heard her say, let's embrace the new era of digital payments. Welcome to Project New Era by Digital FMI, Digital Financial Market Infrastructure. We have entered a new era of money. A new era of money. The world is undergoing a financial revolution from which there is no turning back. With the advent of blockchain technologies, digital assets are ushering in a new era for money with transformative impacts on consumers, businesses, financial institutions, and states, from the conduct of commerce, both online and offline, to the provision of financial services and government support. IBM Finastra participate in UK's Digital FMI Consortium planning retail CBDC. Consortium to carry out first private digital sterling initiative in the UK as well. Now, we were talking about the EU, digital euro, now about the UK. The United Kingdom will soon see a first of its kind collaboration between central bank regulators, commercial banks, and other financial institutions towards exploring a retail central bank digital currency under Project New Era. Finastra, Fusion Essence, a new era of disruption, enabling the power of open API. Do you notice all the new era connections here? I showed you Finastra is working with the Project New Era for the digital euro and the digital UK, the new era of money. All right, and this is all under the Fusion Cloud. They say Fusion Essence right there, but it's all under the Fusion Cloud platform for Finastra. RippleNet via Fusion Tool Messaging. All right, I bring you all back full circle. I brought you in from digital currencies into our real world, the boogeyman, and how this is going to look and play out, and who the players are, right down to the key players in the digital world that you and I operate in also. We know how to plug in and plug out from the matrix. This might be the video that gets my page blown up. If not, I'll see you guys on the next one. I hope you found value in this. Nothing but love and respect.
We making moves. We making major moves. We making moves.